Americans are a bit on edge about anthrax and biochemical weapons, and for good reason.
Although our government has formally declared its opposition to using such weapons, even in war, the U.S. military has developed, tested, and even deployed biochemical weapons in the past. Some of that testing is still underway not far from here.
George Knapp of the I-Team is here with the story of the Dugway Proving Grounds. George.
Paul and Gary, what's happened at the Dugway Proving Grounds in central Utah should sound familiar to Nevadans because, as in our own state, the military in Utah has uncorked some of the nastiest, most dangerous testing programs imaginable. You name a chemical or biological terror and it's been tested at Dugway, often in the open air. It's got some people wondering if the U.S. doesn't share some of the responsibility for the current anthrax scare. In 1968, sheep in Utah's Skull Valley started keeling over in some horrible and agonizing death twitch. More than 6,000 of the animals were buried in trenches, and while no one was certain what had killed them, suspicions centered on the nearby Dugway Proving Grounds. Dugway is a million-acre Army base where, since the 1940s, the military has secretly tested the foulest, most dangerous stuff known to man.
It's similar to Nevada in that regard. The Great Basin has become the bottom of the sink for all of the nastiest military projects in the country.
As one of Utah's leading military watchdogs, Steve Erickson gets to hear all of the horror stories about Dugway, from former base employees who developed health problems, from Native Americans whose reservation abuts the base, from health officials who wonder if Utah's rate of multiple sclerosis, which is 7 times the national average, might be related to what's happened behind the ominous warning signs and imposing fences of Dugway.
They have had a record in the past of being real cowboys out there, a reckless cavalier with safety procedures and the health of the public.
Just name a biochemical agent and it's been tested here. Anthrax out there?
Yes.
Black plague?
The plague, yes. Yes, many others. Q fever, Lassa fever. There's a potpourri of pathogens.
Files obtained through the Freedom of Information Act show the list of deadly substances tested at Dugway. Amazingly, many of them were sprayed into the open air from jets traveling at hundreds of miles per hour. A single pinhead drop of nerve gas can kill a person. The Army pumped 500,000 pounds of the stuff into the ecosystem at Dugway, firing it off in everything from chemical rockets to artillery shells. Some poison shells were fired into live animals. Tests show conclusively the sheep that died in 1968 were killed by nerve gas that had drifted over the mountains from the base. Yet the Army continued to deny responsibility for 30 years, even after it had compensated the ranchers. Even though the U.S. Army no longer sprays anthrax, bubonic plague, and sarin nerve gas out in the open air here at Dugway, some would say our current national anxiety is biochemical karma coming back on us.
There's certainly some reason to believe that the anthrax that has been in the mail was produced by someone here in the United States. So yeah, we do have that sort of goes around, comes around syndrome here.
The Army still tests biochemical agents at Dugway, but only inside sealed labs and only for defensive purposes, the Pentagon says. To test them as offensive weapons would violate international treaties. Admittedly, it's a fine line.
The U.S. government maintains the position that all the work we do with chemical and biological agent is defensive in nature, but that may not be how it's perceived in other parts of the world.
Pretty fine line.
Yes, it's like having a pistol. That pistol is neutral. In and of itself. It can be used for defense or it can be used for offense.
There is no direct proof that the anthrax being circulated through the U.S. mail can be linked at all to Dugway, but if it turns out to have originated in an American lab, which the experts say is likely, then there may be a Dugway connection, because Dugway has been our country's premier testing facility for such agents for the past 40 years.
What about stockpiles of these agents? Do they still exist? And if so, what's being done about that?
Oh, yeah, big piles. Stockpiles even today are huge. 30,000 tons of nerve gas, for example, are in storage outside of Salt Lake City and Tooele County, waiting to be incinerated. Some of what's already been burned came from the military bases in Nevada. But is it a good idea to burn this deadly stuff off? A lot of experts would say no. A lot of people who live in Utah would say no as well. That part of the story tonight at 11 o'clock.
Okay.
See you then. Thanks.